Hello aviators, I hope you had an awesome Thanksgiving holiday if you're here in America. In this episode, you're going to see a video that's a bit of a departure from my normal flight training videos, but it's a very important message and I'm so honored to tell it. It's something I say to students all the time when they ask me why I'm an AOPA member and why they should become an AOPA member. In this video, you're going to see specifically how AOPA fights for your rights, not just at the federal level, but at the local level too. Check it out. I'm Jason Miller, a full-time professional flight instructor. On the Finer Points channel, you can join me as I bring you tips and tricks that I've learned from 20 years on the flight line. Aviation is as American as apple pie. Not to sound braggy, but maybe it's because we were the first. It's not to say there aren't great aviation systems in other countries, but to be out on the front lines of aviation is woven into the shared history of what it means to be an American. From the first plane in flight, to the first across the ocean, to the first to land on the moon. I was on my way to Washington, D.C. to see these vehicles up close, and very excited about that, I might add. But more importantly, I wanted to see the reason the United States continues to promote aviation beyond the needs of the airlines, which I can tell you firsthand is a system in need of repair. No one denies that. I felt it flying from San Francisco to D.C. All I can see is a sea of heads. We're supposed to be boarding right now. It's 10:40. Upon arriving in Washington, you realize that another thing that's as American as apple pie is a good old fight for your rights. I coincidentally stumbled upon this. But I was really headed to AOPA to meet the small group of individuals who are positioned here in the Lion's Den, specifically to fight for your rights. I was here on this day to witness AOPA President Mark Baker testify before Ted Cruz in a Senate committee on the future of ATC, specifically whether or not privatization is a good idea.
Which brings us to the topic of today's hearing: improving and modernizing air traffic control for the American people.
Thank you for the opportunity to discuss our mutual desire to ensure that the United States maintains its leadership in aviation by operating the safest, most efficient air traffic control system in the world. AOPA has and will continue to strongly oppose privatizing the system. It's a public use system that should benefit all users, not just some. We have seen where ATC privatization hasn't worked well for general aviation in other countries, and we don't want to go down that path.
I can understand somebody saying, well, hey, look, the airlines are paying a bulk of those fees. Why shouldn't GA? So what do you say to them? What's the argument?
We think it's going to destroy GA. And remember, the airlines don't pay it, the passengers pay that.
Got it. And
that passenger excise tax goes into the fund.
Yeah.
And then also the fuel taxes at general aviation and business aviation goes into the fund.
I see.
The FAA, roughly those numbers are about $17 billion goes into the fund. And the FAA costs about $17 billion. It's in perfect balance. I wish there were other government programs as well off as a balanced system. So there's no need to do this from a money, if you will, right now. And it'd be just like taking away your bus terminal in the middle of South Dakota.
Right.
They need access to these markets.
Right. And is it just a like a sort of a greed motive? Somebody just says, hey, we can make a lot of money if we get in there and privatize this system?
Well, I've never liked to accuse others of greed, but certainly...
I don't know how to phrase that. Not so much greed, but is it financially motivated? Let's say that.
It always is, isn't it? Follow the money?
I guess it is.
So, in today's system, we're moving around 800 million passengers on the airlines, and they do a good job. And yet, you can see a day will be 1 billion passengers moved around by the airlines. And certainly, if the excise tax stays at the same level, could even be potentially a surplus in the FAA system. So yes, follow the money.
Yeah.
On the other hand, tell me what's wrong with the current system that can't be fixed with groups working together. And we have been working together for years to create, better systems, datacom, where you now are getting all your releases electronically instead of, on the radio all the time.
Right.
And ADS-B, so traffic and weather information is available. But there's a lot of these things that are moving in the right direction. I think we ought to harvest some of those advantages and recognize the big problems today. If we were to privatize, your seat's not going to get bigger on the airlines.
AOPA is not only fighting for us on a national level. Going back to the offices, I got to meet the individuals who work for us on all levels. They know every local airport fight going on all across the country. It was profound seeing how many people are there and what they are doing every single day to fight for our rights.
The hearing today, it's not strictly about privatization because we killed it, and we currently are under a 5-year FAA reauthorization. So there's no chance of it coming up near term. But the forces that want privatization are setting the groundwork today, even though we've got 4 more years left on the bill. And that's what this hearing is about today. They call it, ATC reform. They don't call it privatization, but that's really what will be happening today. For an association of our size, it's a pretty big operation down here. So the entire government affairs team is about 16 people. We cover everything here at the federal level and work with our regional managers at the state level to cover whatever bad or good ideas come up in states.
So I'm the Vice President of Airports and State Advocacy. I work in the Government Affairs Office, which is in D.C. Of course, our headquarters is up in Frederick. But I run the team of regional managers all over the country. We have 7 regional managers from Alaska to Maine to Florida. We cover basically 3 main equities. We are the frontline defense for airport issues. As our members come to us with problems at their airport, whether it's they're going to close the runway and they're not going to tell us, or they're going to close the crosswind runway or whatever. If they don't like what's going on, they tell us. Our team of regional managers, and I have another couple folks that are airport experts. I have the airport policy manager for here at AOPA. So eight people that report to me, plus a couple of consultants. That team is our first line of airport issues. And whether it's a small issue where a runway might be closed for construction, maybe it wasn't handled properly, or in the minds of our members, or it's an outright closure threat. The city council wants to close the airport. Santa Monica, Reed Hillview, Linden, New Jersey, there's a bunch of them. We're on that front line. And of course, the earlier we get started, the better.
There's a lot that we do on a daily basis that doesn't raise to the level, and a weekly, monthly basis, that doesn't raise to the level of even being, you wouldn't be aware because we don't publicize it, we don't do stories about it. And everything from working individual airport issues to, we have regular meetings on aeronautical charts, for example, because there's constantly issues with mistakes on charts or new things that need to go on charts or things that need to come off. So we're on a committee that meets 3 or 4 times a year that just works on charting issues. We're on committees that work just on implementing next-gen, committees on weather, weather and weather products, NOTAMs, you name it. We're doing it.
After hearing about all the things that AOPA does for us with offices in Frederick and here in DC, I can't help but wonder, do our yearly dues actually cover all this?
No, they don't. And in fact, it's kind of interesting because we have had a series of dues increases over the last 5 to 7 years, and we've been criticized for that. And I frankly don't understand the criticism because of maybe we don't do a good enough job of conveying all that we do and the value that you get for that money.
We have the Airport Support Network. It's a membership, volunteers, 1,500 members around the country have volunteered to be our eyes and ears and our advocates at those airports. It's how we're learning early on what's going on. It's really impossible to scan 5,200 airports, which really means 5,200 counties and cities, for agenda items that look like they're bad for the airport on the city council meeting. That's the waterfront we're trying to cover. So we have a big network of members that help us kind of keep an eye on airports. And it's a positive relationship. It's always, collegial with the airport managers. We are still looking for volunteers to identify themselves. They go to the AOPA website. It's aopa.org/ASN, and they can find, look up their airport identifier, and instantly it'll pop up if there's a volunteer or not. And they should know who the volunteer is, right? If they have an issue, they pass it to the volunteer. And if there's no volunteer, we say, go ahead and click the I volunteer button, and we'll start the process. The regional manager will contact you. And it's a great way to get involved if you want to be a little bit more active with your AOPA membership. Yeah. And a lot of members are. They're already on the airport advisory boards, or they're friends with the airport manager, or they know the city councilman. That's the perfect person to be are volunteer because they'll have a clue when something's up.
So you guys, behind me here is the FAA. This is the federal building where the FAA is housed in Washington, D.C., just down the street from where the AOPA advocacy offices are located. So you can see, I mean, they've really got boots on the ground here in Washington, D.C., 16 people and an office, completely separate from the operation in Frederick. These folks are just advocating for our rights, right? Taking the policies set by Mark Baker, having face-to-face meetings with the FAA, lunch meetings, dinner meetings, Senate committee hearings like you saw earlier in the video. So, I mean, really AOPA has boots on the ground here trying to take your desires, your voice, your needs, and get them heard and get them turned into policy that works for us as pilots. That's why you pay AOPA member dues.